The Washington DCA tower was communicating out any transmission on a VHF and UHF frequency. Any transmission would come out on both bands. The Blackhawk was transmitting out with a UHF band, while the CRJ jet was transmitting out with a VHF. To put that in context, both the airplane and the helicopter would hear any air traffic control, but they would not hear the other aircraft or helicopter, conversely, if they were transmitting out. I bring that up because we are now working through the transcript of the air traffic control, and many people have heard online different recordings. Those do not contain the UHF radio transmissions. What they're hearing is the VHF recorded on certain software programs. As we synchronize the timing on that, we hope to be able to release it tomorrow. We do have it. We're working through the synchronization because the specific time will be very critical. Now, a few updates in regard to the Blackhawk helicopter. We can verify it was on a training flight that would utilize night vision goggles. We do not know at this time if the night vision goggles were actively being worn, nor what the setting may be. Further investigation should be able to let us know if that occurred and what factor it may play in the overall accident. We do know that and we announced the combination CVR and the flight data recorder was extracted last night from the aircraft. When it was brought to our lab and opened, there was a water intrusion. Again, this is not uncommon. If you recall, in the CRJ, that cockpit voice recorder also had a water intrusion. It is going through the same process of ionized water until it's put into a vacuum oven. We still are very confident we will have that data. On the Blackhawk, we can confirm that we are looking into a priority air transport, and that's where you hear PAT, that on the prior day, PAT 11 was in close contact with a Republic Air flight. The Republic Air flight rejected the landing and did a go-around. The reason we are bringing this up is our data currently shows there was over 1,000 feet of separation between those two aircraft. 1,000 feet is a good safety barrier. Obviously, the pilot made its own decision in rejecting the landing. We just wanted to bring that fact out. It will be considered in the overall evaluation of this accident. So now let's go on to controllers. At the time of the accident, there were 5 controllers in the air traffic control tower cab at DCA. One was a local controller, which was handling not only helicopter, but fixed-wing aircraft. The local controller also would be handling arrivals and departures close in airspace and the use of the runway. There was a ground controller, which was handling all aircraft and vehicles not on the runway. In addition, there was a local assist controller. This person is responsible for assisting the local controller in any type of actions that are needing, reviewing data, scanning the field, a multitude of different things. You will not hear the assistant controller on any of the ATC tapes, but we can confirm that person was in the cab. In addition, there's an operations supervisor who has direct oversight over the tower. This is someone who manages everyone that's involved in the operation, along with an operational supervisor in training. That leads us to confirm there were 5 people in the tower at the time of the accident. At this time, we have interviewed the local controller, the ground controller, and the local assist controller. We anticipate having the interviews with the operations supervisor and the supervisor in training conducted no later than Monday evening. And for a little bit of context, this is a controller's worst nightmare. It hits everyone that works in that cab and knows them very hard. These interviews take a long time, not because there's that much talking, but there's several breaks that occur for emotions, just to be able to compose themselves to talk about what happened. We want to be thorough. If we need to go back for additional information, we absolutely will. We're getting full cooperation and access to those individuals we need. And we hope, again, to have them completed no later than Monday. Now we're going to talk a little bit about altitude. And I'm going to preface this, and we're going to try to work through your questions. But I want to be very clear. Our team has had some internal debate on releasing one part of this. And whenever I explain it, I hope you will understand why. When we received the recorders from the CRJ, we were able to define an altitude of where it was very close to the time of impact. That is a data point we feel very comfortable with. We also have an initial set of information in regard to what was being seen on the cab in the control tower. We have not finalized that and need to get more granularity to it. And we currently don't have the readout from the Blackhawk. I put all that into context for you in that whenever I give you some altitude information, one part of the three pieces we have defined. Another part we feel fairly confident but need to get more information, and a third we don't even have. Currently, the CRJ, based upon the data recorder, at the time of impact, was at 325 feet, plus or minus 25 feet. This is from the belly of the CRJ. The CRJ itself is 20 feet and 8 inches from the wheel to the top of the tail. So from the belly, the CRJ at time of impact was 325, less or minus 25 degrees. And for those who follow this closely, that is a corrected altitude. It is based on the ADSB data and the flight data recorder. Our preliminary review of what the tower cab was showing on the data screen that would have been in front of the controllers was 200 feet near the time of the accident. Again, this data is preliminary. Tomorrow, we feel very comfortable that we'll be getting the additional data sources that will confirm precisely what it would have been on the screen at the time. And I would also caution you, there's typically in the cab on that screen, it may be a 4 to 5 second refresh rate. But obviously, this is something that we're going to be looking at very closely. The third prong of that is the helicopter recorders. Between those three, whenever we have those data points finalized, we feel that we'll be very comfortable in saying exactly what altitude this occurred at. And I know that's been a lot of speculation. You may have a few questions on it, but I want to caution, we're trying to give you what information we have and we verified at that time. With that, we'll take some questions. Just one second. Ma'am?
Claudia from the AP. So you said that the altitude, and the recorder recorded the altitude of the CRJ. Was it trying to pull up before the collision? Was that what you were saying?
The question was the altitude that was read from the ADSB and the voice recorder, was it trying to pull up? I can tell you at one point very close to the impact, there was a slight change in pitch, an increase in pitch. That is something that we will get you more detail on, but it was an indication of an increase in pitch.
Thank you, Todd Grady, Triple with the Fox. So are you also saying that there was a 100-foot discrepancy between what the air traffic controller was seeing on the screen in front of them and what the height the altitude of the plane? There was 100 feet difference?
So the question is, was there 100 feet difference between what we found the plane to be operating at and the air traffic control tower? I'm saying the initial data we have on the control tower cab says 200 feet would have been visualized. This is a fairly good estimate, but it needs to be finalized. I shouldn't say estimate. It's a fairly good initial read. It needs to be finalized. And again, the CRJ was operating at 325 feet plus or minus 25.
And how common is it that the two aircraft would be operating on different frequencies with the same control tower?
The question is how common would it be that the two aircraft would be operating on separate frequencies? It is completely common. Military operates on one frequency, civilian on another. We're just trying to clarify that because you're only reading something or hearing some things online, so we're trying to get out and dispel some myths. Yes, sir.
Mr. Inman, Dave Laval with DC News Now. At this point, you've given us the CRJ, but can you speculate on the altitude of the PAT at this point?
We cannot the question is, can we give any information on the altitude of the PAT? We cannot at this point. Obviously, an impact occurred, and I would say when an impact occurs, that is typically where the altitude of both aircraft were at the moment. But again, when we have the data from the recorder, we will be able to give you more specific.
And just to follow up, if I may, sir, there have been reports, can you comment on reports that PAT may have flown above its max limit for that airspace?
So the question was, can I comment on reports that PAT may have flown above its max limits? No, because I haven't heard that. And I don't try to look at the media that much. So by not saying that, I'm not denying, but I just haven't heard it. We haven't discussed it. I'll ask the investigator in charge. Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, I can provide just a little bit of context. The PAT 25 was within the lateral boundaries of a helicopter route. The ceiling of that route was 200 feet. As Member Inman said, we have not got the data out of the FDR for the Blackhawk at this time, but that's what we know.